So, girlfriend, tell us how you got to where you are today. I just would love to hear your story because you're inspiring as fark. And I know a lot of us would be like, yes, queen. So
Oh,
tell
thank
us
you.
everything.
Yeah, well, so I feel like my journey into coaching is a little bit different than a lot of people. Often when people answer this question, I think who are in the coaching space, it's like, oh, well, I was doing the corporate thing, or I was, doing this other thing for 10 years and then I transitioned, or I was a therapist and then I realized that was depleting and then I changed course and pivoted into coaching to have more freedom. But
Mm,
for me, it actually started. I feel like I've always been doing this in a lot of ways. Like it's just naturally who I am and what I value and believe. Like I really have always been fascinated by what makes a meaningful life and what makes a meaningful, like how we can all contribute our own gifts in a really unique, beautiful, fulfilling way that's regenerative, that we don't get exhausted by because it doesn't feel like work, because it feels like
mhm.
just doing what we're here to do and being of service. So I've always been led to books and things and experiences like that. And in a more traditional sense, I think what I went to school, I went to Chatham University, which was an all women's college at the time for school. And I studied psychology and I've always been fascinated, like I said, by sort of the other end of the psychological spectrum of like neutral to thriving versus mental illness or something to diagnose and then bring someone to a point of sort of neutral and surviving. And what I was finding in all of my studies, maybe not surprisingly in retrospect, was that most of what I was learning was about how to take someone who was quote unquote broken and bring them to a point of like functional.
Mhm.
And that for me just didn't feel like what it was really about. Like, I'm like,
No.
okay, well, so we can all just be mediocre, or so we can all just like survive and get by. That doesn't feel very inspiring. Like, what the heck? What's that
Mhm.
about? So for me, I was curious about the other side. And I finally had one of my favorite professors who was sort of a mentor to me in college. He led an elective. He taught an elective in positive psychology. And I was like, this is it. Everything lit up inside of me. I was like, yes to this.
Oh,
And I had spoken to him about, how do I do this? Because that's not what I'm seeing in what most people's career trajectory is. They're not really interested in doing this. So what is it that I should do? And he was like, well, you probably shouldn't get your master's in counseling like you were planning to do. You should probably just be a coach. And I was like, well, what does that mean? Like what, like, okay, what do I do now? Because I was on this
yeah.
track to just like go straight through and get a master's degree. And he was like, well, there's no master's degree in this. And I was like, shoot, well, now what? Disrupting my whole path. And he was like, you really shouldn't do the counseling thing, because if you do, you're going to spend years training and getting all of this stuff that you don't really want to do and wasting your time and money and energy. And so I was like, okay, great, noted. And then, of course, because my path was sort of disrupted and I was choosing to go with a non-traditional path,
Mhm.
I ended up getting hired at a magazine publishing company that I was interning for in Pittsburgh, selling ads, doing like random event planning, which was kind of fun, honestly. Like I was in the community, I was doing a lot of networking and I was meeting a lot of people, and my clients were all entrepreneurs, like really inspiring, awesome people who were like taking chances and risks and making the city a better place and making the world a better place. And I was just so lit up by supporting them and helping them to tell their story through the magazine and getting their ads just right and making sure that their messaging was clear and that their story was told. And I would have these really long conversations with them a lot of times.
Mhm.
And I would notice that a lot of them, there were some common threads. There were some things that they were doing right. And there were some things that weren't working for them, like working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, always hustling, burning themselves out, not feeling inspired, feeling like they had to do it alone, not letting go of things, not delegating, all these things that are very common traps that entrepreneurs fall into.
Yes.
And I started to connect some dots based on what I was learning. And gosh, there's so much, but to keep it succinct, I got a coaching certification. I did a year-long training, which was really fantastic.
Mm,
And that was all women. So there's a common thread for me of this like sisterhood
yes.
piece that weaves through all of it.
Mhm.
Um, and I knew that I was really passionate about women in leadership and women in business and women having a seat at the table and not just preserving leadership positions and CEO positions and things for old white men, because I don't think that that's how the world is going to get where we need it to be. And I think we need a more holistic perspective to
Yes.
solve a lot of these big problems that we face. And we need a more communal approach, and we need women's wisdom to really shine and be heard and be felt and be experienced to solve the world's problems. And businesses are really a way that we solve problems, right? It's like problem, solution, create something out of nothing. And that to me was always really inspiring. I was also, I had pitched like a business incubator while I was in college and got into that and was like building this other thing. It was like a sustainable restaurant, and learned a lot through that, took entrepreneurship classes, had a minor in marketing and sustainable food systems,
Mhm.
and just kind of like mishmashed what I wanted to learn together into some degree.
Yes. Oh my
And
God. That
yeah, so
angel
then
man,
I know. Yeah,
he
I know,
guided you in a
truly.
totally different direction than you were even planning.
Yeah. And it's what I wanted to do, but honestly, I didn't know that that was like an option,
Yep.
right? I thought it would come through a more traditional path. So, I was gung ho, but I just didn't know what the heck that meant. Because at the time, right, this was 2013,
Hmm.
coaching wasn't what it is now. It was
No.
not, I mean, Instagram wasn't what it is now. Nothing was what it is now. This actually might
Mhm.
have been more like 2012. So, yeah, it's just like, it's funny how looking back, like all those pieces fell into place. And I feel like I've been doing this longer than a lot of people in the
Mhm.
industry. So it's funny to see. Because now, this past year, especially, I feel like there's been this great resignation. And a lot of people have entered spaces like coaching and consulting and like done for you services and online business and all of this. And I'm like, oh, interesting. I
Welcome.
mean, more power to them, but like, welcome. Yeah, been here for a while. Um, yeah, so that's kind of how I got started. And then I started coaching my first few clients in, I think, my second month of my coach training, because they said you could get started whenever you wanted, whenever you felt comfortable. So I started building my business on the side, and then left my full-time job in December of 2014 and never really looked back. And I've been coaching women entrepreneurs and leaders um, ever since. So for the past almost 8 years now. Isn't
Mm,
that wild? I was
yes.
like thinking about it, because everybody's first question to you when you meet them, they're like, how long have you been doing that? And
Yep.
how did you get started? And I'm like, well, do you want the long or short version? There's so much detail that matters. Okay.
I know. I know. It's true. That's so interesting
Yeah.
thinking back in 2012. And I love how I'm just thinking of like my journey with coaching and doing the
Hmm.
Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, that started a long time ago. But
Yeah.
I don't know. There's so many things I want to ask you right now just because I'm excited. I'm like, yes, let's dive in.
Ask
But
away.
I want to know, like, and whether this was intuitively guided or divinely guided or whatever, how you decided or felt called to be like, I want to weave the soul into
Mm.
business coaching.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, for me, to be honest with you, the two don't feel separate. And
Mm-mm.
I think that's where people are really missing the boat and missing the opportunity. And I know that you know this and feel this way and share this too. But I feel like a lot of business coaches out there are very much in an old paradigm, right? They're in like a very strategy above all else, and planning and time management and sort of these like masculine energetic concepts, which are necessary and great and wonderful,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't work and they are not sustainable if not coupled with the feminine energy and the soulfulness and the purpose and the contribution and spaciousness and rest and cycles of business. Like we just can't sustain, especially as women who have a very unique hormonal rhythm every single month, that we are different every single day. I mean, we all know this, right? We feel it, we sense it. I feel like a lot of success coaching and mindset stuff and business stuff is very much about kind of like a one size fits all, and putting our creativity in a box and putting our fullest expression in a box in a way, which to me is like the complete opposite of what coaching is meant to do for people.
Yes.
And I think also what I'm seeing in the industry now is also this sort of like 5 steps or like a methodology, cookie cutter stuff, where it's like, if you just do this, then you'll have all this. And I've never found that to really work. No. There are best practices, of course, and those are things I share with my clients. But ultimately, I feel that my job as a coach is really to decode and hold space for your soul's wisdom to come through, because that's how you create actual alignment. That's how you create fulfillment. That's how you build the right business. Because honestly, you can build any business successfully with the right like science of success, right? Like with the success leaves clues, and you can kind of replicate and duplicate and copy and paste things that other people are doing. But I don't think that's the hard part. It's the hard part is building the right business that's going to be fulfilling and sustainable and beautiful and spacious in the way that you want it to be in your own life, that you feel fueled by, not depleted by. Yes. And I think that's where people are really missing it, because a lot of what's out there, and like a lot of what's out there is still very much this like hustle culture, toxic perspective that is coded in pink and then called feminine. And it's just effing not, it's not, that's not the meaning of that word to me anyway. And this like sort of, women supporting women, like that's great and wonderful, but it's more than just like a hashtag and a meme, like if you're not living it and embodying it and embracing it in your actual life, it means nothing, just like anything else, right? Like you can spit advice from an ivory tower or whatever, but if you're not embodying it, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
So I don't know if that answered your question, but
it did. And I'm like, oh my God, I really want to like dive into that. I know I used to do this and I still have to catch myself. There's so many times where it's like, just tell me the strategy. Just tell me what it is. Just tell me this like plan. Just give me the blueprint. Just tell me the easiest way to get there. And it's like, okay. And this goes for business. This goes for like, and honestly, anything in life. But it's like, we just want this like very quick fix, this like simple solution. And we bypass everything that has to do with our inner knowing, our own wisdom, our own soul, because we're looking for this like bullshit masculine, here it is, I have the answer. And it's like, no, you have the answer.
Yeah.
Like you have the wisdom. And I love that you, I don't know. I love that you don't separate them, because it's not separate. It's like, it's your soul. It's who you are.
And it's about, I believe it's about harmonizing both that masculine and feminine energy in each moment to find the right balance that is required in that moment, in that situation. And it's never the same. It's a dance, right? It's sort of like this spectrum that you can kind of slide the energy balance up and down as the situation calls for it. And I think that's what it looks like to be masterful as a leader and as an entrepreneur, to be able to sense. And this is very much like, this is the art of it, right? It's not the science of it. It's the art of it. It's that like nuanced artistry that happens in every moment where you're like, where you get to ask yourself, like, what is needed? What is required of me right now? What am I called to create? How am I called to create it? How do I want to feel? and asking the right questions all the time.
Yes.
And I think that's why coaching is so powerful, because we don't do that left to our own devices when we're trying to do this all alone, right? Like we're constantly, we're like, what's the next thing? What am I supposed to be doing? Okay, well, so-and-so is doing that. So oh, that's a good idea. Let me grab that. Let me run with it. And we move so quickly without stopping to ask ourselves the right questions that we end up creating something that's totally out of alignment, that might look beautiful and be perfectly orchestrated and built, but it doesn't feel satisfying in the way that we're craving. And so we never have like the peace, because peace comes from when we're like satisfied and feeling like, yes, like I get to relax into the alignment and the space that I've created for myself by doing what I'm here to do.
Yes.
And receive abundantly for that work, because that's when we become like truly magnetic, is when we are so aligned with what it is that we're here to do, that the money just flows, right? So yeah, and I think it's ever evolving. And that's the other thing I think people don't really get, at least when they're starting, maybe, or even when they're experienced in business. It's like, this is an ever evolving thing. You are an ever evolving being. Your business is an ever evolving ecosystem that is connected to your own energetic ecosystem as well. And so they need to be working in harmony together. They need to be sustainable. They need to be symbiotic. To really be to create thriving in any capacity, whether it's life or business. So yeah.
Yes. I really want to talk about, and first let me give an example. I want to talk about kind of like running and creating and managing your own business in a way that feels good for you and not what someone else is doing. So like a quick example is, and just because we were talking about like coaching and coaching trainings, and like, it seems like there's a lot of coaches all of a sudden. I'm sure possibly in your coaching training, they give scripts on like how to run sessions and whatnot. And this is just an example of what can feel good for you versus what doesn't. So last year or a year and a half ago, when I did my mindset and life coach training, they came with scripts. And I remember when I first practiced working with someone, I'm like, okay, I'll follow the script. And I'm like, ew, that felt so unaligned, so unorganic. Like I wasn't able to ask the questions that I intuitively wanted to ask to tap in. And then I just like, I threw away the scripts and started doing things and ran the sessions in a way that felt good for me. And I saw so much more transformation and up leveling and just like power. And so how would you say in running, managing your business, how to keep it in alignment with you and your soul and not what anyone else is doing to allow it to be more powerful and more like magnetic?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of everything, right? Like everything we do is connected to this. And there isn't a super straightforward answer, I think. So I'm going to try to like put it into usable support for people listening.
It'll come through.
But really the answer is like everything, right? Every decision we make is either a choice to, it's either based in love or fear, right? It's either based in contraction or expansion. We're either shrinking or we're growing, right? Like there is this duality of our decisions in every moment and how we choose to approach life and how we choose to approach business. And if you're a business owner, you know that you are making decisions constantly about everything from like brand colors to what you're sharing on an Instagram story to what your next launch is going to be to how you're going to support this client today. I mean, it's endless. Everything. What you're going to wear for your photo shoot. Like, it's just, there's so many freaking decisions all the time.
Yeah.
Who you're going to hire, who you're not going to hire, who you're going to fire, it's so much. So that being said, I think in each moment that you're making a decision about your business, really taking the space and time to check in and not rush through these things, because your overall results are are sort of like the culmination of all of these little decisions, all of these small actions you've taken or not taken over time. And I think that there's this idea that like there's this focus in our culture, and especially business, on intensity over consistency, where we think that success or results are going to happen when we go at something with this intensity, right? When we get the right perfect strategy and we go all in and we do it so much, like all at one time, and it's like we need 2 weeks and that's it. And it's like, no, actually the seeds I planted 5 years ago in my business and 7 years ago in my business are still creating the fruits of the labor today.
Yep.
And that consistency is actually what creates our results. And so I think this maybe answers your question, which is that like, it's all of those things, staying in alignment with you, checking in with your truth, making sure that you have people and support systems around you to be able to hold you accountable to that and ask the right questions and really reflect what they're seeing and hearing and feeling from you in a certain moment, right? Like you've been on a coaching call with me before, I'm sure, where someone has shared like, well, I'm making this decision right now in my business. Do I launch it this way? Do I launch it that way? And even
Yes.
I think we've talked about this too for you many times in many different capacities,
Yes.
where it's like, okay, so here's the idea, here's the vision, here's the program. What's the best way I could launch it or sell it, or is the price point right, or whatever. And I think in each moment like that, it's having a space, having support, being able to go there, because left to our own devices, right, we shrink ourselves, we stay in our comfort zone, we don't like stretch beyond, we don't go into the unknown with like, you know, gung-ho and excited. We're like, oh, I'm scared.
Yeah.
It's unknown, it's uncertain. And I think part of it is also really trusting your like intuition, your wisdom, what's coming through for you, and going with it. And like actually the going with it is hard. That's the hardest part, is like continuing to stick with it. Like so many people are so intuitive, as you know, as you teach, right? Like I'm sure women in your community are like super intuitive. They know what they're here to do. They know what they're, and the problem happens when we start doubting it, or when we start telling ourselves a story about it, or we start saying, I can't, or we start shrinking in fear, or we start getting, we start letting other people's opinions sway us, or we start sharing things too early that other people's opinions can come in and kind of like rip that seed out.
Yes.
And yeah, I think it's really the trusting and the sticking with it and the consistency and the knowing, like really staying in total conviction that you are trustable, that your calling is trustable, that your intuition is trustable, that your dream and your vision, if they're, you know, they're for you because you have them, or else you wouldn't have them, like these ideas that come to you.
Yeah.
They're choosing you, and you should probably do them and like go after them and pursue them. But so many people don't.
Yes.
It's like insane to me how many people don't. Like, you know what to do, you're just not doing it because you're so stuck in your own little like monkey mind world of holding yourself back and doing what's safe and comfortable. And the true magic happens, the true results happen, the true breakthroughs happen like right outside of that zone. And all you have to do is continue to get comfortable being uncomfortable, and you will do well. Like if you can, I think it's all about learning to like expanding your capacity to hold more uncertainty and more unknown. And that has a direct correlation to the results and the success that you will see in your business.
Yes. Oh,
and
I love that.
Your life.
Yeah.
Because like vulnerability, I mean, in relationships and everything, it's how we make anything happen. It's like putting yourself out there in any way, in all the ways. So maybe there's a good metric for people, like a little homework assignment here, where like, if you can make yourself uncomfortable and step like right outside your comfort zone every day in a way that's important to you, that would be a way to know like how uncomfortable you are every day. That's how you know you're living into your purpose.
Yes. Yes. Because it's not going to be comfortable.
No. And
at first.
I see this
Wild.
with my partner, Jeff, because he's kind of newer to this work.
Uh-huh.
But I watch him, like, he gets signs of bald eagles and then something amazing happens. And he'll like do one little thing. He'll take like one step out of the comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
and like all of this possibility and all of these opportunities come rushing in immediately. And it's cool because I see that, and I see that for myself and with my clients, but it's cool to
Yeah.
see it when it's someone else who's like outside of that work,
Yes.
and to see it happening. Like, it's not a law of the universe that's only applicable to some of us. It's like literally everyone. Why are we not using this? Why are we not leveraging how simple, right? Like,
Mhm.
actually how simple. Like, let yourself be 1% more uncomfortable than feels tolerable every day, and you will see insane results.
Literally.
Yeah,
Literally.
literally.
There you go. Homework assignment. You know
Yeah.
what's it's so interesting. Like there's so much fear of us trying even to do the 1% like out of our comfort zone because of
Mhm.
failure. And it's
I
like,
don't even, you know what? I have a lot to say about that.
let's fucking say it. Let's just
Let's
say it.
say it. Let's say it. Okay. Failure can only have power over you if you give it power. So,
Mhm.
what I've done from the very beginning is I say success is a non negotiable. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of like how and when exactly it will happen. But luckily, that's not my job. That's the universe's
Mhm.
job. And all I have to do is continue to show up and serve and be in alignment and take care of my energy and, be clear on my vision and keep taking action toward it. And eventually something happens, right?
Mhm.
And I've also said failure is not even real.
No.
It's not real. What does that mean? Right? Like,
Mhm.
I don't even understand what people are afraid of anymore when they say they're afraid of failing. I'm like, what does that mean? You have a moment of redirection to something different than what you originally thought in your very limited human mind could happen,
Mhm.
because there's something new that's calling you then, or it's all just information. And I think if we learn to think like a scientist, where it's like, I'm not ever right, I'm just less wrong than I was before this moment, because now I have more information about what works and what doesn't in my business or in my life.
Mhm.
We're just following those breadcrumbs. And honestly, that's what it takes to be in alignment, right? You like take a step and you feel,
Mhm.
does this feel more alive? Do I feel less alive? Okay, great. Let's move toward more alive. And if
Yes.
I feel less alive, let's course correct and pivot toward what would feel better in this moment.
Yes.
And there we
Yes.
go, right? Like, it's not,
Right. There is
I think
no,
we overcomplicate.
absolutely. It's like there's no failure. There's no
Mhm,
right or wrong. It's literally just, I'm going to try this. Did it feel
mhm,
good? Awesome. Did it
mhm,
not feel good? Okay, let's try something else.
mhm.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. That's it. And I think also it's like, okay, failure only happens if you stop trying, if you give up, if you let
Yeah.
something that didn't go according to your projected idea of what should happen and your expectation of what should have happened, if
Mhm.
you let that stop you from continuing to course correct,
Mhm.
then that's what most people would call failure, right? But that's really just stopping trying, stopping moving forward, right? Like,
Yes.
we can
Not
just
taking
rule
any.
out, right? Like, we can just change the definition for ourselves, because often with words and concepts that we're afraid of, we haven't actually taken the time to reflect on, what does that even mean for me? What am I
Mhm.
making that mean? Is that what that word and concept actually is? Or is it my own projection and my own story about it that's dictating how I relate to it or approach it? And if we can think about our own story, the story we're telling ourselves about that thing,
Mhm.
and then we can just change the story that we're telling ourselves, now we're free of it. Now we're now it doesn't have a hold on us anymore, because it, it can't hurt us if we don't give it power.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's a choice that you get to
Mhm.
make. And when you choose that for yourself, it's like, cool, I can be free and I can move forward
Mhm.
in a way that feels fucking good for me,
Mhm. Yes.
not anyone else.
Yeah.
Um, God, yes. I really wanted to talk about like, this is just making me think of how everyone's like, okay, but like, how am I going to get there? Right? Like,
Mm.
what's my
Mhm.
next step? Tell me
Mhm.
everything. And it's just
Yeah.
like, and how that can weave into business. It's like, what I wanted to ask you, it's like, how can we release the how
Mm.
in our
Mm.
business?
I love that question because I always say to people like the how is great, but it's not really your job. Like part of it is knowing like what are my action steps I'm going to take. Of course, you're not just going to sit there and do nothing and like wish and hope and pray that a result lands in your lap. Like that's not that like a new client just, I mean, sometimes it happens that way.
Mhm. It can.
Truly, sometimes it does happen that way. But also it's like you've got to show up and go first a lot of the times and show the universe you're actually serious about that and you're ready. And that often looks like taking aligned action, right? So I think that I like to say feminine first, masculine second. And the feminine is like the what, the why, um, the vision of it, the purpose of it,
Yes.
the meaning, the why it matters, the
Mhm.
like what is possible.
Yeah.
And then the masculine is the like, okay, what are we going to do with it? Or like the logical plan or the marketing structure or strategy or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think often we get so tripped up on like the how
Mhm.
first, and we want to go masculine first, feminine second, or just like take the feminine out completely
Mhm.
and not ever really think about that. Um, so I think we get so tripped up with the how that we don't realize if we let the why go first and we let the feminine go first, it informs and reveals a clear path forward most of the time.
Yes.
And we get so heady about all of it. We get so tripped up in like, how is it going to happen? Part of it is there are limitless possibilities for how anything can happen and come into form, as we know, right? Like you got to leave space for the magic to work,
Yes.
right? You've got to leave space for like miracles and the universe to show up and unexpected things to happen that
Mhm.
actualize that intention. But
Yes.
the how is usually not your job. Like the first few steps are your job, but then you're getting information, like we were talking about before, right? So you go first, you do something. It doesn't even usually matter what. It's just like
Mhm.
put some feelers out, do something, tell people about it, talk about it, start a podcast, do a thing, put it up, make it real, like do something so people can like find you in terms of a business, right? Make it easy for them to book with you, do the thing, like make it easy for them to pay you, all those like structural pieces, right?
Yeah.
That's like part of the how, that's your responsibility. And then part of it is knowing like you can start to look at, okay, well, how you can ask more specific questions, right? Like, so how are people going to pay me? How are people going to find me? How are people going to know I exist? How are people going to know how I can serve and help them? How are
Mhm.
people going to know what I can do for them? How are people, right? You can take it like further and deeper with the how questions and
Yeah.
actually like answer them. Because usually when you ask them, a clear answer can come through.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be the right, like, there is no right thing. There is
No.
no objectively right thing. It's just like, do you have an answer to that? Because if you don't, you probably should. And if you don't, then let's create one.
Mhm.
But it's not like you don't have to do all of it. Like, it doesn't have to be, I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, and Instagram, and wherever the heck else now,
All
and
the shit.
doing all the things all the time. Like, it doesn't have to be that extreme of a how. It's
Right.
like, okay, people are going to find me through Instagram. People are going to come to my website. Then they're going to use PayPal. Then they're going to use Calendly to set up an appointment with me. Then they're going to blah, blah, blah. So like walking through the how and thinking about, okay, like if I could wave a magic wand, how would this go? How would this like flow beautifully?
Yes.
And then start creating the pieces so that how can happen. And then the how that's not your responsibility, like how exactly am I going to, I don't know, like there are parts of it that beyond like exactly who is my ideal client.
Yes.
And how am I going to reach them in Barcelona at 2 p.m. on Tuesday? Like that kind of detailed stuff, let that be the universe's job and get it out of the way.
Yes.
Like don't try to control it, because what you're going to do is like choke it and like put a kink in the flow of it happening for you.
Yes. Yes. When you said, like, when you go into the divine feminine, that's when the magic happens. I was just thinking of, and for those listening,
hear you anymore. That's weird. You're not muted.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-mm. Can you still hear me?
Yeah. Wait, let me mute. Can you hear me now?
No. That's so odd. It just happened. That's so strange. Let me make sure. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
What did I do?
That was so weird. I don't know. You didn't even mute or anything.
No, let me just make sure everything's plugged in really tight. Maybe that just fell out. Hold on. Weird. Okay. Oh, glutes. Can you hear me now? Oh, thank God. Because I was about to go on something. And I'm like, I could not even repeat that. What was I going to say? You said something really good. Hold on. It was about magic. But you can
space for, yeah.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. I have to think. I was like, oh yeah, when you said that. Oh, okay. Yes. Ooh. So when you said the divine feminine, and when you embody your divine feminine and you're in the flow, that's when magic happens. So for those listening, in my human design as a projector, I'm all about trial and error. So when I started my business, I was in that how. And I was like, I need to have everything mapped out. I need to have all my programs, all my courses, blah, blah, blah. And I was just pushing. And then now, however many years later, Emily and I were just talking about this before we hit record. We are in this like, how can we simplify our business? How can we only put energy towards things that light us up? How can we only put energy towards things that are like a hell fucking yes, and clear out stuff that doesn't feel good anymore? And everything that I'm clearing out right now is everything that I created when I was in the masculine. Everything that I created when I was in the how. And when I was in my divine feminine, that's when like the magical programs came through. And those are the ones now that I'm like, this is fucking everything. I wish I knew this in the beginning.
Yes. And it takes that to get to a place sometimes where you get it and it clicks. And then you're like, oh, I know what this feels like. I know when I'm creating, I can discern when I'm creating something from that, like how and sort of like pressure cooker anxiety space. And when I'm creating from like, oh, this feels really different. This feels really juicy and aligned, and it's just happening through me versus I'm making it happen.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think, I feel like I've always been conscious of that in my business. And I think that that's why I'm still in it, because I see a lot of people who come into the coaching industry who are like, great, I had a 6-figure month. And then it's like, they can't sustain that. And so then they're done after a year. and they've run out of money and they've overinvested and they're in debt because it's not sustainable. And they've created something because it's what would work, but it's not what feels truly aligned. And it's not what people want from them, because people can feel that. That's like the part of the sales process that gets skipped over, but actually is the most important thing, I think, is that people can feel when something is out of alignment for you and when it's not, and when you're doing it for the wrong reasons, and when you're doing it because you really love it and it's happening through you and it's meant to be coming through you for them. And I think that, that process of creation and really like pruning and tending your business, we can always, I think, especially in this industry, we are always, it's like more, add more ways to serve people, more clients, more bigger offerings, more lower ticket things that create a funnel to something else. And then this high ticket thing, and then this and that and the other thing, and then write a book and then do this and It can become so much. We can always be adding more. That doesn't mean we should be. Doesn't mean that's what's going to work. Doesn't mean that it's worth it. It doesn't mean that it doesn't even mean that's what's profitable, honestly,
Yes.
A lot of times those things, I know I've seen so much of this recently on Instagram. Like I've seen so many posts of people being like, here's why I'm burning down my $500,000 a year business. Here's why I'm not doing it this way anymore. And I feel like so many more women in the online business space, especially coaching, because we're all kind of signed up on this soul contract level to be like evolving at a rapid pace all the time. So we get these lessons probably faster than the general population. I've seen so much of it this year. I've also seen so many women really taking space to rest and be and receive so much more than I've ever seen in their, business owners. And I've seen so many people who are like burning it down, this like perfect business structure that everybody a few years ago was like, you need to do this and you need to do a telesummit and a podcast and a this and a that and they built it all up. And it's like, okay, well, I don't really like this. This feels like a jail. This feels like it takes so much from me to sustain this, even if I'm delegating, even if I'm, even if I have this big team, like now I have to pay the team. And so I have to make way more and we have to go bigger and there's always more to do and more to be. It's like that. I mean, that can be right for some people. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having that vision. And it's not right for everybody. And it's also not, I think knowing the way you love to work with people is so key. And it takes a lot of trial and error. It takes a lot of multiple iterations of a certain thing and testing and playing in it and being in it and experimenting and all of that. But also I think it's once you find what you really love and what you're uniquely great at and what your zone of genius is and what people come to you for. If you can leverage that, it can also be like your business model can be so much simpler, so much more easeful, so much more spacious for you. And you get to delegate the rest. And you get to figure out, does that delegation happen through a system or a process or an automation thing or another person or an assistant or a freelancer or what? Like, how do we bring the pieces together? And that's one of the things I love helping women do, and also learning how to effectively lead and delegate and communicate to people that you hire and how to make it all work in harmony and how to continue to expand in smart ways that may be more simple than you think they have to be. And often when we think about like scaling our businesses, we think about adding more. And actually, I think of it, right? Like, this is what I say for the women who come into my mastermind. It's all about scaling and expanding your business. And the ironic thing about that is that most people are like, well, I want to do this and I want to do this and I want to have retreats and I want to all the things. I want to add more, which can be great. Again, for some people, that is the right move. And sometimes the fun part is, oh, okay, so here's the thing you really love. Here's your zone of genius. Here's your thing that people come to you for, that they're always asking about, that they're banging down your door about. Let's scale your gift. Let's scale your zone of genius. And let's do it in a smart way that's sustainable for you. So not only do you make way more money, you have way more time to do life, to be a mother, to travel, to be a great partner, to take care of yourself, to like actually get the fuck up from your desk and walk outside with your dog midday. Like the most simple thing. Like, you did not start this business to be chained to a damn desk all day and be inside. Like, I know, like, the times in my business over the years that I felt the most alive and the most vibrant and the most magnetic, and where things were flowing, was when I actually was doing way less work and way more living.
Yes.
Way more life, like literally walking around downtown Charleston where I live and looking at beautiful flowers and gorgeous architecture and my dog and all the things. Like, that's when I feel like I'm in my creative sweet spot, and things just, like, ideas start to come, and like content starts to flow out of me, and I'm like, hold on, I'm on a walk, let me grab like my notes on my phone. I'm like typing away. But yeah, like that's the juice of it, right? That's like what we're all aiming for. And yet we overfill so much that we don't have space to receive any messages. It's like the landing strip at the airport is full and the planes are circling, and we're like, why is nothing working? Why am I have an issue with receiving. And it's like, sometimes your issue with receiving is literally that you have an issue holding space and letting it be empty enough for things to, like, letting things go and letting them clear out. And knowing that the reason those things are clearing out is not a problem. It's not that you're doing something wrong. It's because you're asking for something better or more or different. And then actually letting those better, different, more things come in. But first, it's that like excavation of all this shit that's not working or not serving you or not feeling good. And then actually holding that space for what's coming and not filling it just because it's now empty. Like, that's the hardest part.
It is hard. And
for most of us,
it's hard to like almost unlearn that and to stop that habit. And one thing I will say, it's so deep, because there's just things in our lives where we can like use as excuses. But like a few months back, I don't know when this was, I guess right before I gave birth, I did like one round of one-on-one. I was like, let me do this because I'm going to take time off. I don't want to work one-on-one. So I was obviously pregnant, and I'm like, okay, you're tired, so let's give ourselves more space. Something I have never done in my life and business. So that month when I was like, you feel like shit, give yourself more space. Like, let's stop filling our schedule with stuff that's not necessary. I need you to rest. Like, that was my focus. Okay. And I also want to invite in a few one-on-one clients before I take, my break and give birth. That was the most money I made that month ever in my business. And I cleared out so much fucking space. So I'm like, oh my God, it took me to be like pregnant and feeling like shit to have my most successful business month. And all it was,
isn't that funny?
Was letting go, not putting energy into the shit that doesn't matter, not sitting in front of my computer for 8 to 10 hours a day, just doing bullshit that does not matter. And only putting my energy into what lit me up, aka my one-on-one clients, and then allowing myself to lay the fuck down and take naps.
Yep. That's exactly how it works. Yeah. I'm not surprised that was your like most profitable month in business ever, because that's what I see constantly. Even if you're not and for those of you who are not pregnant and who want to have your best month ever, try resting, right? Like, try doing the opposite of what you think you should be doing. And it's wild what happens. I'm in a moment right now where I've been like, okay, I know that next week I have this little like solo retreat set up for myself. I know exactly what I'm going to focus on then. So right now, and for the past month, I've been like, Jeff and I went to Mexico on vacation. I launched a journal that I wrote and published. Like, that came out this month. We went to Pennsylvania and Boston for a full week road trip to see our families for the holidays. Now we have friends here. We were talking yesterday. We're like, this last month of the year feels like there's been more activity than the whole year combined.
Yeah.
How is it still December? It's so weird. And because we've actually like, I actually have stopped a lot of things. Like I'm kind of in a period between rounds of my mastermind. I've
Yep.
stopped doing another program that I lead that I'm restructuring right now. There's not a lot happening. And so I know that's what I plan into my year every year is like 2 months where everything ends before things begin so that I have that space for myself to recharge and feel spacious, but also that I have space to receive.
Yes.
And also that I have space to like not be so caught up in all the doing and the serving of other people, but the receiving of visionary downloads for me and my business and my life and my future and all of the things that matter to me personally. Because in this work, over the last 2 years, I think I've been busier than ever. Like I've been fuller than ever. I've been serving more people than ever in lots of different ways. And like that means I need more space for just me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. To avoid the burnout and to avoid going
Yes.
back into those old habits of doing, pushing, forcing, hustling.
Yeah. Because we will. It's so easy to.
So
We're
easy.
surrounded constantly. We have our conditioning from probably how we grew up and school and work in other ways and society and hustle culture and what we think it means to be an entrepreneur and a leader and all this stuff that isn't necessarily our truth, but we take and project onto our truth. And I just, we need that space to be able to clear out and empty and just be in that space of like empty presence, space holding, expanding our capacity to receive and actually recharging and re-nourishing ourselves.
Yes.
To feel aligned at all with anything.
Exactly. Yep. So don't wait until you feel like shit to make space in your schedule. Do it.
You
now.
can do it preventatively. Yeah, you could do it preventatively if you know that, and this is something else again that I work with clients on. It's like, let's look at your whole year and let's plan out when are you off. It's also why I have 2 retreats every year woven into my mastermind, because I know the women in that experience are like, they are high achieving, they're on, like they are doing a lot, they're serving a lot, they're in this creative mode, they're taking big action. They're gonna need freaking breaks, they're gonna need rest, they're gonna need space held for them, they're gonna need time where they just focus on themselves, where they leave their family, where they leave their friends, where they leave their environment and they go somewhere else beautifully, like a beautiful space that's inspiring and nourishing for them, where everything's taken care of and they can just be and just be receptive and let those visionary ideas flow about what's next and what they really want and what needs to be edited and what needs to be added and all of it, because that's been so critical for me in building my business also. And without that, we end up burning out. We end up being like, why is nothing working? And we just keep pushing harder, thinking that's going to be the thing. Or we keep doing more, thinking eventually something will stick. And usually that's not the case. And I think that's why that's why a lot of like service providers especially like give up, or they get burnt out, or they can't sustain it, or they quit, or they, I don't know what else they do. They go work a full-time job again, because it's the way that we approach this has to be so different and look so different than what we're probably used to from whatever field we're coming from or whatever kind of work we're coming into this from. And we bring all our old baggage, and then we we make it a corporate job. We make it a 9 to 5. We make it a whatever we walked away from, because that's the only way we know how to relate to work, how to relate to productivity and money and all of the things. We just like pop it right on to this new blueprint, and we just say, okay, now everything's going to be different and I'm going to be living a lifestyle of freedom. And it's like, no, you're not, because you didn't do the inner work.
Yep.
Yeah.
You didn't take time to feel into what you want and what feels good for you and your soul.
And break the rules, like break the freaking rules that you have either consciously or unconsciously ascribed to.
Yep.
Because it doesn't need to be that way. Like, you get to call the shots. You are the boss. You
Mm.
are like, you get to be the artist of your own life and of your own experience. And I think most people don't realize that. And that blows my mind. I think I often, because I'm constantly like surrounded by amazing women like you, and I'm talking to people about these bigger things, and I'm, writing journals and things as guides for people who are ready to like do the work. It's sometimes hard for me to remember that most people aren't doing that.
Yes.
Because in my reality now, everybody's doing that, and that's so normal. And that's like the new normal. And I think that that's also like what I want for other people, is to surround themselves with people who are doing it, that get to create that sense of new normal for you, because that brings that fear threshold way down.
Yes. So true.
The environment matters so much more, like who you're surrounding yourself with, where you are, what thoughts and beliefs and stories you're surrounding yourself with, all of that, like the sort of food you're ingesting, like the brain food and the soul food that you're ingesting, is so much more important than like most, like any strategy you could have, because that's the element that makes it sustainable. That's what keeps you going. That's what fuels you.
Yes.
For the whole journey.
Yes.
Yeah. There's so much. I could
So
keep talking about all
I know. I'm
this
like,
stuff.
yeah.
I know.
Yes. So what is I heard it in a few different ways, but anything else that you may want to share? What is your biggest piece of advice for reclaiming your power in your business?
Don't be afraid to break the rules and write your own, because you get to call the shots. That's it. You get to make this whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to look like anybody else's. It doesn't have to look like what you thought it did 2 years ago or 10 years ago. You get to constantly be in a state of evolution and reinvention, and don't ever let anyone tell you anything other than that. You are not married to an identity that you have held in the past. You get to reinvent yourself. You get to evolve. You get to transform. You get to become whatever you want, whoever you want. And so does your business. You get to create it to be whatever you want it to be now and moving forward forever and ever and ever. Like, it never ends.
Yes. Fuck yes. That was a mic drop moment.
Woo!
Ooh, I love that. And then one thing I ask all of my guests is, what makes you feel like a badass babe?
Ooh. Well, okay. So I'm going to give you like a snapshot of a moment where I feel like, yes, I feel like when I like actually, especially the last few years, we've all been living in like sweatpants and stuff. But when I have like my hair and makeup done and I'm ovulating and I feel like so energized and I've got like people around me and I feel like I'm in that zone of just like, yes, I feel so magnetic. And I have like a cute outfit on, and even better if I'm like traveling somewhere and feeling like out of my like responsibility zone, that I just get to like be and have fun and play. That's when I feel my best. And also I could say when I'm like traveling somewhere and I'm just there and I know that my business is like good and making money in the background, and like I'm like, how sweet is this? Like, this is so awesome. I get to do what I love, but I also don't have to be doing it all the time. Like, I have space within this for me to live the life that I want to live.
Yes, I love that. Ooh, and then tell us where we can find you and anything else you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Emily Castle Official. And you can find me on my website at emilycastle.com, and Castle is spelled Cassel. And I guess what else I have to share is right now what's happening is we start the next round of my 2022 Soulful Leadership Mastermind, January 12th. So if any little late joiners who want to come in, you're not actually late yet. But if you are listening to this after that point, still reach out, because we still have a few spots left, and you want to be part of that, it's the only way to work with me one-on-one moving forward. It's the way to get access to those 2 retreats that I mentioned. This coming year, we're going to Tulum, Mexico, and Carefree, Arizona, to 2 gorgeous retreat centers that are amazing. So sunny, warm weather, 2 times a year, where we get to all be in that juicy space of sisterhood and just receiving and recharging and nourishing ourselves in all the ways: soul, body, mind, business, all of it. And we also have an amazing lineup of guest experts and trainings and things that are coming next year. So I'm really excited. And we have, as of this recording, I think 3 spots left.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yes. Ooh, I'll pop the link in the show notes to those who want to join.
Awesome.
Join you or reach out. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your magic and wisdom and your gifts with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun to reconnect with you also.
Yes, babe. So much love.